Hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the lovely podcast, The Endurance of Labor Laws. I am your lovely host, Lesley Sullivan. Today is episode 42, and we are going to take a look at the Airline Pilots Association International. But first of all, I want to give a big shout out to my listeners, so let me go to my lovely list here, because you guys are awesome. I love to see you here online. That's wonderful. So here we go. New York, Texas, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania. And there's another big shout out I wanted to give another list of from a previous podcast, because there were quite a few that listened to this previous one a couple episodes back. Let's see here. Massachusetts, Texas, Oklahoma, Rhode Island, Virginia, and again Pennsylvania and New York. So that's really good. The numbers are growing very much so in Massachusetts as well. So that's really neat to see that, because that's up north in the Northeast. So that's really good. Love that. And then there was Oregon and Nevada, so that is good as well. Okay, so first of all, I want to do some housekeeping. So I did a little bit of research here. So in one of the previous podcasts, I had mentioned where I had met this Greek pilot, and he was here, and he was engaged to this really very much unattractive woman. But I looked up their Air Force, the Greek Air Force, however you want to pronounce it. Their Air Force is called the Hellenic Air Force. They were founded in 1912. And let's see here. They have approximately 42,500 personnel. They have a little over 600 aircraft. That's kind of neat. They have 8 different types of air defense systems. That's very interesting. Oh, excuse me. And one thing I wanted to mention, sorry, I just drank a bunch of, diet cranberry juice. I apologize for burping. So I just got done eating dinner and drank some diet cranberry juice. So if ever, just FYI, if ever you need cranberry juice, because I love the taste of it, regular cranberry juice by Ocean Spray has a lot of sugar in it. But if you do the diet cranberry juice, it still has a great taste, but it's not loaded with sugar. And plus, also, it doesn't have aspartame in it, which I don't like aspartame. Aspartame is a fake sugar molecule that was barely approved by the FDA years ago to be added into drinks and other things like that, that is to take the place of sugar so that way you won't have calories. But aspartame, it gives me migraines. It makes me feel really sick. It's not a safe substance to drink. So what I try and find is I try and find fruit juices to take the place of soda pop, because I love Dr. Pepper. But I'm very particular in my fruit juices because there are so many fruit juices that are just overloaded with sugar. Like, for example, an 8-ounce glass of just regular cranberry juice from Ocean Spray, I think it's like 8 ounces. I think it has like 32 grams of sugar. That is insane. And to put that into perspective, I think you're only supposed to have 20 grams of sugar a day, maybe half that. It's not a lot. So if you're drinking 32 grams of sugar just in an 8-ounce glass, and you're just, you're basically getting way too much sugar all at once, but that's all that you can have for the entire day. But there are other sugars in other foods, even natural sugars, but because if you've already drank 32 grams of sugar just from a fruit juice, you're pretty much over-exhausting, I think it's your pancreas and your insulin, and it's not going to make you feel very good. So just kind of be aware of that. But anyway, I apologize for belching. That's not very polite. But anyway, so it's good to be alive. I guess I'll say it like that. But anyway, they have 42,500 personnel. They have a little over 600 aircraft. They have 8 different types of air defense systems. And I really kind of want to look into that later, because I'll mention this. I know someone whose son went to the Air Force Academy in the United States. So this is a little side note for you, a little extra treat, as they say. He went to the Air Force Academy here in the United States, and when he graduated, we got to go see like the big graduation, and it was a long and big to do. I mean, I think I probably would have enjoyed it more if I was engaged to somebody or married to someone that was graduating, or maybe if I had a child that was graduating from there. But it was just so long and dragged out. And plus we were in the sun. It was just burning up hot. And it just was not, I'll just say, I didn't enjoy it. I enjoyed celebrating later, like when we had a nice dinner and things like that. But in terms of having to deal with their graduation, it was very grueling. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. But anyway, we were talking to some of the, I guess you call them cadets. I can't remember what the right word is. But there was a cadet that I could tell that was not from the United States. Well, he was from, oh gosh, some Spanish-speaking country. I forget what it was. But he just seemed kind of wimpy and just kind of he was a womanizer. I could tell immediately that he was a ladies' man and a womanizer, but he was kind of wimpy. He was kind of wishy-washy, and I thought that was weird because, I'll put it this way, most womanizers that I have met, they're not wimpy. They're usually pretty tough and they're arrogant. And it's in that arrogance that, how do I describe this? It's like because they're so macho man. You know that song, macho man. I got to be a macho man. I love that song. Super funny. But usually when a man is a womanizer, they usually have that macho-ness to them, and that usually gives them bravery, kind of like overconfidence. And usually they're tough. Well, with this guy, he was just kind of a slime ball. He was just kind of this weak, wimpy guy that could get any woman he wanted just because he had the accent. Well, I asked the guy that we knew that was in the Air Force about that guy because I noticed him right away. I was like, something's not right with that. And so he said that in one of their trainings, he said that it was very difficult training with him because he didn't have courage. I was like, well, what is he doing in the Air Force? I was like, if he doesn't have courage and he what did he say? He couldn't make decisions very well. I was like, what is he doing in the military? That's insane. And he said, he goes, he's a nice guy and a ladies' man, but what's weird is that he has poor decision making. He's very indecisive. He can't really be trusted. And I was like, whoa, what's going on with that? And I guess our Air Force Academy here in the United States, and I don't agree with this at all, our Air Force or Military Air Force Academy takes in students that are in other militaries from pretty much any country. And so he was supposed to come here to the United States and be taught by our Air Force and learn our defense systems. Well, considering that this guy was blatantly a weasel, I don't think we should be showing our defense systems or tactics to anybody outside the United States. I don't even think that should be common knowledge amongst civilians or soldiers. I think that it should only be people that are actually going to be using that software or that information that should have access to it. I'm like, why are we allowing foreigners to train in our military when they could care less whether we live or die? And this guy I was talking to that I know, he goes, I agree with you, Lesley. He goes, we don't like it. We couldn't stand training with him because you couldn't trust him. You could never trust this guy. I was like, why didn't they kick him out? He said, I don't know why, but they allow these guys, and sometimes girls, but it's mostly guys, to come over here and train in our military. So I wonder if the Greek military, if the reason why they have 8 different types of air defense systems, if the reason why they have that is because we made them aware of what we have, which I don't agree with that at all. I think the United States can be very stupid when it comes to helping other countries. Sometimes we release information we should never, ever release. We are not responsible for other countries like that. They need to have their own military. They need to have their own technology. They need to have their own personnel, their own aircrafts, their own weaponry. We should not be supplying that to other countries like that. And needless to say, I learned a lot by going to that graduation from the Air Force, and I was just kind of like, wow, this is what the Air Force does. Like, it just, I don't know how else to describe it, but it just made me not feel very safe. Because I thought if they are allowing weasels like this from other countries into our military just to train and look at our systems, that's a nightmare waiting to happen in terms of having to go to war. And it makes it more difficult to defeat your enemy. And I'm not saying this guy's an enemy, but if he's already someone that can't be trusted, then that's, I don't know, just made me think of a traitor. I don't know how else to describe it. But to me, that's a huge red flag. And you have to be careful what you tell people, what you show people, and what you convey to people. And if someone's not an American, they shouldn't be in our military. They shouldn't be allowed to train over here. And so I know from that guy that I met at the mall, when I was working at the mall, that I'm pretty sure he was over here training, if I remember correctly. And I just thought, why are we training other countries' military? Like, I don't care if they're a part of NATO or if they're an ally or something like that. Like, why are we spending our money and our resources and sharing our technology with other countries? Like, especially countries that are overseas, across the pond, as they say. Like, we don't know what their true intentions are, if you think about it, because they're not our neighbor. And I'm not dissing Greece or any other country that maybe we actually care about, but we just need to do a better job of being a secure country, whether it's national stage or an international stage, and really be protective of what we have within our military. And don't allow wimpy, sniveling, weasel-like people into our military. It was just weird, folks. Like, this guy, I spotted him like from far out. I was like, he is not an American, I could tell. His mannerisms, like, I spotted him from way far off, and I was like, that guy's not American. There's just something about it. I don't know if it's because I've been around so many people, and I've worked with a lot of employees and things of that nature, and I just spotted it quickly. I was like, something just said imposter to me. And so that's why I asked our friend about it, and he goes, well, you're right in one way. He's not American, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. He never knows what he's talking about. And he said, how do I word this? He said he should not be in any military, is what my friend said. I was like, and yet we're training him. That's disturbing. But anyway, here's another thing. So it lists there it says engagements, but I guess the wars that the Greek army or Greek Air Force has fought in. It lists the Balkan Wars, World War I, Greco-Turkish War. That's interesting. That was from 1919 to 1922. Then there's World War II. Then it lists air operations during the Greek Civil War. I don't even know what the Greek Civil War is, but that's very interesting. It says here they were involved in the Korean War. I had no idea the Greeks were involved in that. It says here they were involved in the Turkish invasion of Cyprus. That is a little disturbing. Because I remember something going on with Cyprus years ago when I was in my 20s. If I'm thinking of the right situation. I remember back in my 20s, again, I was working retail. I was working with this Russian chick. I had gotten promoted to cosmetics. And because I started out in clothing, got promoted twice actually. I worked really hard, got promoted. I was working in cosmetics, and one of the girls I worked with, she was in a different makeup counter than me, but she's from Russia. And I remember she would be pro-America unless there was something going on with Russia, and then it's like she would totally turn on us. It was really sick. It was really weird. She was a good friend until something to do with Cyprus happened. And if I remember correctly, I think it was when Russia went into Cyprus. Pretty sure it was Cyprus. If I'm wrong, I will correct that in a future podcast. But Russia, I think, invaded Cyprus or something for their oil. And I just thought that is so evil. So they're basically just taking over another country just to steal their resources. And this chick, who's from Russia, obviously Russian, very much not sympathetic to the United States at all. I'm like, the only reason why she has citizenship is because she married an American and had a kid with him. So, but anyway, she just kept defending Russia on this. And I was like, you don't see the problem with this? Like, they're hurting civilians in this country, and they're doing it out of greed to get control of the oil. What they should be doing is honoring and respecting that country that is their neighbor, of whichever one it was, and just work out a deal with them. I would rather work it out in terms of capitalism, because then it doesn't look as bad. In fact, if you're doing business with someone, you're actually honoring them. You're not stealing their resources, you're buying it. But Russia did not want to buy it, it wanted to confiscate it. Excuse me. So then it goes on, they were in Operation Desert Storm. I had no idea the Greeks were involved in that. They were in an operation called, an engagement called War on Terror. I had no idea about that. And the next one is the 2011 military intervention of Libya. I had no idea about that. So that's very interesting about that. So there's some housekeeping on that. Now, there was another article that I looked at because I was thinking about Puerto Rico. And so I looked up Puerto Rico, just to look up some things about them. And one of the first articles that popped up, it says, this is a Time magazine article. I'm trying to see where it says when it was printed or I think it was in 2020. Oh no, I take that back. This was originally published April 16th of 2021. And then it was updated April 19th of 2021. And the title of this article is called Influencers, Developers, Cryptocurrency Tycoons, How Puerto Ricans Are Fighting Back Against the Outsiders Using the Island as a Tax Haven. Just from the title, you automatically, I guess some people want to automatically take the side of Puerto Rico, but because I know that you really shouldn't take their side, I know that that's just a lie about trying to make you feel, what's the right word, sympathetic towards Puerto Rico, and it's shaming wealthy people, which I'm like, you know what, if you don't have wealthy people, guess what, you don't have an economy. So appreciate the people that actually work hard and pay the taxes. So in this article, it discussed how Puerto Rico, the governor there, he's trying his best. He's really trying. The governor in Puerto Rico is trying to help their economy recover because if you remember, Puerto Rico some years back got hit by a really bad hurricane. And Puerto Rico did not have the infrastructure to sustain that kind of, I guess, natural occurrence of a hurricane. And also they did not have a good public system set up to repair their island. They act like they're a country, but they're not. So they're still somewhat recovering from that hurricane, which I don't think we should be sending them any money because, first of all, they're ungrateful. They're lazy. And that sounds harsh, but it's true. They're ungrateful. They're lazy. They think that they should just be able to own property and not pay taxes on it. So, and you'll find that when you read this article, like if you read between the lines, I look at it this way. If Puerto Ricans knew how to run their island, they would not be in massive debt. And they would not have these problems. But because these Puerto Ricans, they don't understand currency. They don't understand balancing a budget. Their governor does. Is he perfect? No. No governor is. But he's trying to help his people. But his people are turning against him. And I'm like, these people are morons. They are idiots. And so here's the thing. He passed legislation that would encourage rich people to relocate to Puerto Rico, but in order to get a tax haven credit, so to speak, and I'm paraphrasing this because I don't want to read this whole article to you, but it's really good. He was trying to help Puerto Rico get rich people to come and live and work in Puerto Rico and start their businesses there and or move their businesses there. Why? To restart their economy. To bring more money into the island so that way their island can get back to normal, if not be more prosperous. But some of these Puerto Ricans, and it sounds like quite a bit of them, they don't want people from the mainland coming there. And there's a picture of this person in their SUV. It says, Yankee go home. That's what they think about Americans that go to Puerto Rico to move there and live there. They're calling us Yankees. Well, the first thing when I saw that, I was like, oh, so you do act like you're not American, but yet you take our tax dollars. So make up your mind. Do you want to be a part of the United States even as a territory, or do you want to act like your own country and, look and act like Haiti, who is super poor, they have lots of diseases, and they're not stable. So make up your mind. Do you appreciate the United States or do you not appreciate the United States? Because Puerto Rico, you're getting millions of our dollars, and that's millions with an M. You're getting millions of our tax dollars, meaning money that is being pulled out of our paychecks. You know all those people that you don't like on the mainland? That's us. And to my listeners, that's you and me. You got these Puerto Ricans on Puerto Rico, that lovely little island. They don't respect our work. They don't respect our tax dollars. They think we're evil for moving there, for bringing our businesses there and trying to help their economy and rebuild it. So there was that Yankee go home, and then after I thought about it for a moment, I busted out laughing at these people. I was like, these people are so dumb and stupid, these Puerto Ricans that put this on their car. Because see, here's the thing. I'm from Oklahoma, as you very well know, my lovely listeners. Here's the thing. Oklahomans, I'm in Oklahoma City. We think people from Tulsa are Yankees because it's up north. So I literally just busted out laughing when I thought about it for a second. I was like, they're calling us Yankees? Like even the Deep South, they're calling Yankees. I tell you what, if you call someone from Alabama or Georgia, if you call them a Yankee, man, you're going to hear an earful if you call them a Yankee. Like, this is how dumb Puerto Rico is. Like, they don't even understand the history of the United States. Like, basically where the Mason-Dixon line is, they may not even know what that is. They probably don't even care, because it just looks like they only care about themselves at this point. But, they obviously don't understand what the North and the South meant in terms of the states that fought in the Civil War. Otherwise, they would not be calling us Yankees. I just bust out laughing. I mean, I kind of get what they're talking about. Because they're an island, they're south, whatever. Look, just go drink your martini or margarita. Well, they probably wouldn't drink martinis because they probably associate that with rich people. And they sound like they just want to be, they all want to act like they're poor, which a lot of them are poor, but they just want to, view people as, oh, well, if you're rich, you probably drink your martini. We don't want you here. It's like, oh, so you don't want my money. So you don't want me to come here and help you with your job. You don't want me to help with your economy. Nothing? Okay, see ya, wouldn't want to be ya kind of thing. There was something else that came up in this article. Okay, so one of the things that came up in this article was there's this guy. I guess he's a podcaster or YouTuber or something. I'm not going to say his name, but he has like 20 million followers for his podcast. He has a lot of followers. I'm impressed with this. He says he's leaving Los Angeles to move to Puerto Rico, and he says it's getting crazy here in California paying taxes. He said in Puerto Rico, you're motivated to do more and make more money because of the implications that come with it. Well, here's the thing. California is insane in their taxes. Like, so many people are leaving California because of the tax situation. Well, where are these wealthy people supposed to go? Like, we have some crazy states in the United States where their taxes are so high, it punishes the wealthy. And the wealthy know that the more they pay in taxes to the government, the less, how do I word this? The less that money is going to be circulating in your currency, in your market, because once the government gets your tax dollars, it's basically dead money. Because the government doesn't create jobs. They like to say they do. That's kind of one of the stupid things they talk about in elections. Oh, how many jobs are you going to create? Guess what? Government does not create jobs. It's the private sector. It's people like you and me that work in the private sector that create jobs. It's business owners that create jobs. The federal government just sucks it dry of tax dollars, and then it wastes it, it overspends. So that's not creation of wealth. That is destroying wealth. That's why a lot of rich people are moving to places where it is a tax haven or it is a tax incentive. Well, when you have a tax haven or a tax incentive, that means your money is protected. Who wouldn't want their money to be protected? I mean, give me a break. Like, if these poor people or these moody people in Puerto Rico, if they were rich, I doubt they would want to move to California and pay so much money in taxes for way less land, way less property, way less possessions, and have all these rules, laws, and regulations dictated to them by crazy EPA people. I mean, it's just like put the shoe on the other foot. And I just think these islanders are so ungrateful. And then they have a word here. It's something to do with colonizing. Let me scroll down and see if I can find this word. I'm like, really? You're going to pull that card? I just thought, how disrespectful can you be? Like when someone moves to your country, that doesn't mean they're colonizing it. If we were colonizing Puerto Rico, we would take over the entire island, and you would have to speak our language. You would have to follow everything that we do. You would have to assimilate. You're not doing everything that we're doing, and you're not assimilated, so you really can't pull the colonizing card. Because look, we're not Spain. We're not England. We're not France. United States has never colonized anything, so get your facts straight, Puerto Rico. Like, be a little grateful here. The United States has never colonized anything. We became a country because we left the monarchy that colonized different colonies on the East Coast. Puerto Rico, maybe you should get a history book and read about the history of the United States. That might help you. That also might help you understand democracy and capitalism and free trade. If you understand all those things, then you won't have these problems that you're having. Because it shouldn't matter whether or not you have a hurricane, you should be able to handle it. But because your economy is so weak and you're so ignorant on so many things, whenever a catastrophe happens, it's like you never really completely recover and you just expect to get all these tax dollars from the federal government. Well, if it was up to me, you wouldn't get anything. You would be on your own. Be like, okay, so you don't want to be a part of the United States? Fine, we will release you. But here's the thing. If you're not one of our territories, we're not going to protect you. See, because there's a thing. As part of one of our territories of the United States, not only do you get to come in and out of the United States as a free person, basically, almost like a citizen, but you are protected by the U.S. military. So we have to patrol those waters. We have to do a lot to help you and protect you. So be grateful for what we do for you. So let me see if I can find this word that they used. It was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like my mouth just dropped. I just thought, whoa, these people are haters. I guess the legislation that the governor enacted is called Act 60. Let me see here. Well, here's the thing. Part of this article says the government says Puerto Rico needs the money. The island currently has an unemployment rate of 9%. That's just of what is reported, so it's probably double. And has been in a recession since the tax incentives began. Let's see here. Let's see. Okay. In 2016, after the Puerto Rico government, declared its $72 billion debt unpayable, okay? So I was wrong, Puerto Rico. You owe billions, not millions. That's billions with a B, okay? It says, after the government declared its $72 billion debt unpayable, Congress passed a controversial law known as PROMESA to address the debt crisis, which has resulted in austerity measures and tough cutbacks on public services. Good. We are not your personal piggy bank, Puerto Rico. Yes, you are a territory. But you know what? You need to shape up and straighten up. And be appreciative of all the money that you have received from the United States. Because it's a lot. It says here, all right. Well, there's been over 15,000 jobs that have been created in Puerto Rico since these tax incentives. So I think this article is a little biased when it says that there is a recession. Well, here's the thing. If there is a recession, it's not due to these tax haven laws. It's not due to that. The tax haven is trying to bring businesses there. Like, I don't really get how someone can, well, this is basically a lie, some of the stuff in this article, but I don't think whoever wrote this understands what the word recession means. And also, I don't think they understand how money works and how currency works. But, that's their ignorance. I guess they can read some more about that. But it talks about, so another thing the Puerto Ricans don't like is that you have these rich people coming in. and buying up houses and then rebuilding them, and I guess it increases the property value and the property tax. Well, see, here's the thing. If you've got a bunch of people unemployed, or you've got people that are living in really rundown areas of Puerto Rico, of course your property value is going to go up if someone comes in and builds a nicer house. If anything, that should increase your property value. So stop complaining. And if you can't afford the property tax, guess what? You are just like so many other Americans. Well, you're not an American, but you're just like Americans here in the United States when we can't always afford property tax. And a good example of that is California. I kid you not, just for, I was going to say for the heck of it, but I'm trying not to use that word, but just for fun, I looked up on Realtor.com. I wanted to look at all these different houses in Los Angeles because I like to look at the market out there, because I was like, okay, there's a huge influx of people from California moving to Oklahoma. I was like, okay, something's going on out there. It probably has to do with taxes and property and things like that. Sure enough, there were so many houses that I saw that, and this was not like this last year, okay? So come this year, some things have changed. I don't know exactly what, but I noticed this. So I was on Realtor.com. I looked up these houses in Los Angeles, California, and I always look at the value of the house, the price per square footage, and then also the property taxes, and what's the history of that property tax. Whoa, the property tax has skyrocketed in California in just a year. And I'll give an example. There's this one house. It was kind of pretty. It wasn't worth what I would think would be like $2 million, but you got to take into consideration what is $2 million out there in California is maybe like $200,000 here in Oklahoma. Anyway, this house was like $2 million. Take that back. It was like 1.6. My mistake. The house I'm thinking of in my head. It's 1.6 million. And you look at the taxes. At first you see like 20,000 K for taxes. Then you see plus 1.3 or plus 1.6 million. It's like, what? So the taxes are equal or more to the original price of the house. That is sick. And I don't mean sick as in cool. I mean like disturbingly sick that California would do that to people. And what's interesting is that tax was not listed, that property tax was not listed on every house that I looked at on Realtor.com in Los Angeles, California. So I don't know if it's just certain areas or certain zip codes or maybe just certain types of houses, but I just about fell over. I was like, what's the point of buying a house that's $1.6 million if you have to keep paying that every year, year after year, 1.6 million? It's like you're buying your house over and over again. See, that's corruption. And it typically happens on the Democrat side, especially these crazy liberal nutbags, because Republicans, I'm just going to say it, they are not for property tax, especially not high property tax. See, because here's the thing. I think property tax should be completely done away with. And that's probably going to make some people go, oh, my goodness. Well, think about it. I don't mind a sales tax, like whenever you buy something, whenever you purchase something, for sure have a sales tax, but don't ever have it be more than 10%. That's my personal opinion. Because I think if you overtax, you are causing inflation, which we have seen that before. But here's the thing. If you are paying so much money for your house every year, just in the name of property tax, to me that's leasing and fleecing, because that's like you having to repurchase your house every year. Well, guess what? As long as you're in the same house, you're not repurchasing it. You're not buying it over and over again. So that is some of the corruption that is taking place in California. Well, these wealthy people, they're smart. They're smart. They don't want their money to go down a rat hole, because that's where it's going. It's going down a rat hole. And wealthy people are not going to put up with that. They're just not. They are just like getting tongue-tied over this, because I would just think that if I was a millionaire or a billionaire, I wouldn't put up with that either. Why would I want my money to go to some bureaucrat that's just some professional paper pusher in Washington, D.C.? I get they have to have work too, but really think about how much money the state of California and the federal government is getting off of all these taxes, how much they are accumulating in our wealth. And when I say our wealth, I mean the citizens' wealth. That is our money, money that we earned, that we worked for. So basically, our bank accounts are being galvanized on taxes, especially if you live in California, especially if you live in LA. Now, I will have to look up and see what the specifics are with that, because I thought it was very odd. But one thing that I really thought was odd was the same area that I looked at last year did not have that tremendous tax rate where you're almost paying for your house and then some over and over and over again from year to year. None of that was listed on Realtor.com. And some people might say, well, Lesley, it probably wasn't updated. I don't completely believe that. Because Realtor.com and the app is a really good system. It updates stuff like crazy. Like if you're interested in a house, just to look at it, they notify you. They send you notifications, not from the agent, but from the website, letting you know if the price of that house has gone up or gone down. Or also, I think you get them if the house has gone into pending. Like if someone's, thinking about buying, not thinking, they actually have put an offer on the house. Like I'm saying that the website and the app, that company, Realtor.com, they're pretty efficient. I mean, I haven't found anything yet where they were wrong. And believe me, I look for stuff like that because I don't like to get tooken. Well, these Puerto Ricans, like if they were actually educated and they understood what was going on, and you actually put the shoe on the other foot, I think they would be more accommodating to Americans and be like, yes, come here, bring your money here, create jobs, create companies, create wealth, employ people, do great things. We want you to come here. But instead, they don't have open arms to people. They don't at all. And then another part of this article said that they were saying that they basically don't want people from the mainland to go to Puerto Rico because they think that the land in Puerto Rico, which would be the entire island, should only be owned by the inhabitants, meaning the original people that lived there. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. How racist can you be? Like, is that inclusive? No. Like, put your money where your mouth is, but then again, I can't say put your money where your mouth is because Puerto Rico doesn't have any money. So I guess Puerto Rico, you can't put your money where your mouth is because you're broke. And you're having to rely on people from the United States that actually care about you. And have given you a lot of money to help you. And then you slap us in the face with things like this. And I found the words. It's called predatory gentrification. I'm probably mispronouncing that word, but it looks like gentleman, but it's gentrification. I apologize. It's a hard word for me when I haven't seen it or haven't heard it before. But that's what they're calling these people that move there, these investors. So basically, they're treating them, I guess just like people that colonized other countries way back in the day, like hundreds of years ago. And it's like, you know what? How dumb can you be, Puerto Rico? How stupid and foolish can you be? Because see, here's the thing. We're not colonizing you. Because we're not taking over your island. We're actually helping your economy. Because here's the thing. If we were colonizing you, we would do what Britain did, or what Spain did, or what France did back in the day, where when they actually colonize something, they completely invade your country, which you're not a country. They completely invade your territory or your land. They confiscate it. They don't pay you anything. They don't want to help your economy. And they either enslave you, meaning like the slave trade, which you don't have to be black to be a slave. So they either enslave you, or they say, okay, you can either be under our monarchy, you be one of our subjects, or you will be outlawed or be put in jail. Now, has the United States ever done that to Puerto Rico? No. So to say that we're basically colonizing you is a flat-out lie and a slap in our face. So Puerto Rico, please go back to school. If you have schools that go up to the 12th grade, I don't know, because it seems like you're really ignorant. I just don't know. I haven't vacationed there. I did have to, now I think about it, I had to stop there to change flights to go to the British Virgin Islands. So I take that back. I didn't vacation there, but I had to stop there to change flights. I had to jump on one of those turboprop jets. Oh man, it was scary flying on that thing. Give me a 747 any day. But anyway, so I really think, Puerto Rico, that you should go back to school and read the history of the United States, because we are the ones who are protecting you, our military, and also the citizens of the United States with our tax dollars. We are protecting you from financial ruin. So I think you could show some respect, because get this, what if we were saying horrible things about you and we didn't appreciate your jobs, your wealth, and we didn't appreciate you for what you do? I mean, I would think if you put the shoe on the other foot, I think you would kind of see things for what they are, but I don't think you're seeing it at this point in time. So Puerto Rico, I forgive you. I just think you need to grow up and straighten up. I'm just shocked at how much debt you guys have, and it's just literally pouring money down a rat hole. I mean, it's just horrible. I just think, it's almost like you're a little kid, a spoiled, rotten little kid that doesn't want to grow up. It's kind of like all you want to do is go to the beach and just have a nice time under the palm trees. And yet you think that because your people are indigenous, supposedly, I guess I need to read the history about Puerto Rico. I don't know who the original inhabitants are of Puerto Rico. I don't know if you were brought there years ago on a slave trade ship. I don't know. I know nothing about your island, per se, in terms of that. But just because, let's say, for example, you are correct in that, you guys are the descendants of the original inhabitants. Well, just because you are, genetically part of that gene pool, that doesn't mean that your land and your property can't ever be bought and sold. It's not all about you, is what I'm trying to say. When you are a part of society, you're dealing with other people. When you are part or kind of attached to another country, guess what? You have to be considerate of them. And you are also in this world. It's not just about you and your problems. The United States has its own problems. I mean, just look at how much debt we have. I mean, we're just stupid when it comes to debt. I mean, if anything, we need some smart people that pump the brakes on so many social welfare programs, because it's getting out of control. But just look at it this way, Puerto Rico. How would you like it if we used you for money? But yet we were not willing to change our ways. We were not willing to make things better. We just wanted to keep on, as they say, and not change, and just basically keep running you down a rat hole in terms of money. And just keep using and abusing you in terms of financial assistance. Well, that's not right to do that to you, so it's not right for you to do that to us. So please give your governor a chance to do the right thing. Please give him a chance to help you, because he really is trying to help you. I get you may not like us Yankees, as they say, but be appreciative of people that come and visit you, and try and create jobs for your island. Because they don't have to do that, but they're choosing to do so. And I mean, I think it's wonderful when people basically go out on a limb and leave everything that they've ever known and move somewhere and start over. That's not easy to do, regardless of what income bracket you're in. That's always difficult. So, Puerto Rico, please stop playing your violin. Everybody can play a violin. Everybody can. But guess what? Playing a violin doesn't mean you're necessarily part of an orchestra. Because usually when that phrase is, keep playing your violin, that means that you are doing a solo performance of pity and self-sorrow, I guess, and you're not willing to grow up and get over it. And that sounds harsh, but it's the truth. But anyway, that is some housekeeping about Puerto Rico and what's been going on there. And I say, go for it, rich people. I think even more rich people should move to Puerto Rico. I say go for it. If California is doing that with their tax laws, I'd leave too. And here's another thing. This isn't just happening in California. This is happening in France. This has been going on a long time in France, and France is socialist. Like this was several years ago. I'm trying to think, what is the name of this actor? He's a French actor. He's way older than me. He's got to be in his 60s by now. But he actually forfeited his French citizenship, which broke his heart. But he couldn't afford the taxes that France was trying to impose on him because he's wealthy. He's just like, I can't afford to do this. He goes, I work a lot. I travel a lot for my job because I'm a movie actor. And, they're trying to say that I have to pay this tax and that tax because I did or did not stay long enough at my house. I was just like, so basically the French government is stalking wealthy people. They're like, you have to have lived in your house this amount of time, or if you stay too many nights in your house, then you have to pay this tax. It's insane. It's harassment. So I can't remember that guy's name. Excellent actor, really nice guy. And he had to forfeit his citizenship because of the tyrannicalness of the French government. Because they're socialists. Because they just like to suck people of their money. I mean, they're borderline communist. Borderline. I mean, I think the only thing that's keeping them from being completely communist is the fact that not all of their Catholic churches have burned down. Because here's the thing. A lot of people don't know that Notre Dame, that cathedral, it's not owned by the Catholic Church. Because so many Catholics have left the church because they got sick of the corruption of the Catholic Church, they got sick of the pedophiles, they got sick of the bad priests, they got sick and tired of the popes, regardless of what pope it is. They got sick and tired of the higher ups in the Catholic Church just paying off all these victims millions of dollars instead of getting rid of these priests, these homosexual priests. And this might offend some people, but we just need to call a spade here, okay? We need to be adults and just face it like it is. The French people had enough, and unfortunately because of the grotesqueness of what was happening in the Catholic Church, and it was really bad, it was really horrible, a lot of people lost their faith. And they left the Catholic Church, and so over time, the French have become more and more secular, and I don't blame them on that. I mean, I left the Catholic Church. I mean, I normally don't talk about my faith, but I'm not going to say what I was raised per se, but I converted to Catholicism years ago, and I left because I couldn't take the corruption anymore, and that's even here in Oklahoma, in the United States. And I just thought, this is not, for me personally, it's not a good faith for me to practice. I was not growing in my faith at all. It was becoming more and more frustrating, I would say. It was very disheartening because there's a lot of shaming and blaming in the Catholic Church. On the parishioners, but they don't shame and blame the priest, the priests that go after young children, whether little girls or little boys. They mostly go after boys that are minors. It's kind of like they just move them around from parish to parish, or they promote them. That's another thing. They promote them up into these very powerful positions instead of defrocking them. Like they have policies and procedures. They've had these in place since the beginning of the Catholic Church. They've had these policies and procedures in place way before psychological testing. It was not uncommon for a priest to get defrocked. If he was doing bad stuff, he was kicked out. But over time, you had certain people that took over certain positions, and they didn't want to kick out their buddy. They didn't want to do the right thing. And guess what? A lot of children suffered because of that. A lot of people's lives were ruined because of that immoral, grotesque behavior that was committed against children, against minors, particularly little boys. Well, the French people, even though sometimes they can be a little snobby, they were right to leave the Catholic Church. But what people don't know is that because so many people left the Catholic Church in France, guess what? People were not tithing to the Catholic Church because, FYI, the Catholic Church loves money. Believe me. Like, there were people in the Catholic Church that were horrible and cruel to me, but yet they definitely wanted my money. They wanted my tithe. And I'm like, no. I was like, I'm moving on. I'm not going to give to some place that treats me in a disrespectful manner. I've said my piece with that, but, and I forgive the people and I walk away. Like, now I understand why, this is just a side note, but just spiritually speaking here, now I understand why, Jesus tells us to forgive our enemies and to pray for them. I've always known about forgiving people, but to pray for someone that's evil, I used to never pray for evil people. Because I was like, whatever they deserve, they get. That was my mentality. Well, part of forgiveness I've learned is praying for someone. Because learning that you're not the problem and that they are, it releases you from that bitterness. It releases you from that inner struggle. And it releases you from feeling unworthy because of stuff that happened to you. So I mention that because that is nothing new, especially to the French people. Like the French people really suffered at the hands of priests, and they really suffered at the hands of the Catholic Church. So as I was saying, because a lot of French people left the Catholic Church, these Catholic churches, these beautiful churches, could not afford to stay open on their own. So a lot of these beautiful Catholic churches were sold to the French government, and they were turned into historical monuments or museums or things of that nature. And the Cathedral Notre Dame is not owned by the Catholic Church; it's owned by the French government. So when that thing caught on fire, it's not the Catholic Church that had to pay for the repairs; it was the French government, because the French government owns a lot of the Catholic churches in France. And just side note, another thing that's happening in France, and this has been going on, let me think how far back this has been going on, what I am about to say. I'd say since, it'd be probably a decade, a little over a decade, maybe a decade and a half. I would say probably 15 or 16 years. Okay, so for about 15 or 16 years, the French people have been having a problem with Muslims defacing their cathedrals and their churches. Like literally defacing them and terrorizing people while they're trying to go to church. Like there are streets in Paris, France, and I know this because I know someone from France. I actually know a couple people from over there. And they were telling me about this because I was wanting to go over there and visit. And one of them said, no, you can't come over here right now. I said, why? And they said, number one, you're an American, so you will be targeted. Number two, we're having a problem with Muslims defacing cathedrals right now. Because at the time I was Catholic. Because I wanted to see a bunch of cathedrals and things like that. I kind of wanted to do my own religious pilgrimage. And I was told not to do that because it wasn't safe. And the French were having a big problem with this. And the reason why they were having a big problem with the Muslims defacing the cathedrals was because they had allowed a bunch of Muslims to move into the country. Because of that, Muslims, they use the excuse, and I'm not against Muslims. I've met wonderful Muslims and I've met some not so good Muslims. There's good and bad people in almost every religion. But in terms of what we're talking about right now, this was back when there was, ISIS or somebody had done, was like on a terror again. And so the Muslims used that as an excuse to basically just get to walk into any European country that they wanted and just set up shop and just live there and be a citizen or something, or be on an immediate path to citizenship. So basically stupid Europe opened their door to a huge influx of Muslim populations, mostly young men. They didn't move with a whole bunch of their families. It was mostly young men. That should have been a big red flag right there. Well, they totally missed it. And so the French president, I forget his name, but his name looks like macaroon, like one of those cookie things. But he's not very bright at all. In fact, I feel sorry for the French people, but they keep voting him in, so it's their own stupidity. But the French government, because they are so socialist, they are so extremely inclusive that they are so stupid. In that they are very well letting in some of the enemies that they should be trying to keep out. Because they have had problems with aggressive and violent Muslims in their country and attacking Christians. Or anybody really, but especially Christians. They hate Christians. They hate Christians and Jews, for sure. But there are parts of Paris, France, still to this day, even after 15, 16 years of hearing about this, there are still parts of Paris, France that you cannot go on certain sides of the street because you have certain Muslim sects of people, and I say sects, I mean like S-E-C-T-S. I don't mean S-E-X, but I mean like certain groups within the Muslim faith. They have these little pockets of violence over there It's almost like a supercell, I guess you could call it. And so what they do is they don't just move there, they move in, okay? They usually plant one or two people and then they bring in their entire clan from their country. And they use the excuse of, oh, there's violence where we're from. And I would be like, well, why don't you go back and fight it if it's a problem? But they don't. So these stupid socialist governments like the French, they allow these people to come in, undocumented, can't prove who they are, where they're from, nothing. They allow them to move in. And guess what? The Muslim culture, it's not just a culture, it's a type of faith. It's kind of like a warlike faith, I would say, because I've read the Quran. I've read it several times. And I can see why it's such a violent religion. Because they give themselves permission to be violent, which to me, that ceases to be a religion and it becomes a cult. Because you're not practicing something holy anymore if you're giving yourself permission to be violent like that. But anyway, whenever these Muslims moved in, they basically take over an entire neighborhood or an entire side of a street. So, and that's what they have been doing in Paris, France. Just because we don't hear about it does not mean it does not happen. I know that our news media doesn't talk about stuff like that because it's very, very political and very politically correct. And I'm like, you know what? The news needs to just be the news. It needs to be the truth. And they're not telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth. They're kind of completely ignoring some things and then skimming on the surface of others when they really need to dive into these stories and really tell people the truth about what's going on if they're going to be talking about world events, for sure. But anyway, just FYI, if you go to Paris, France, or France in general, just be aware that there are pockets of violence over there. And, well, number one, get all your shots, for sure. Because their country is not always up to date on their shots. And we know that because they have had outbreaks of measles and mumps, and I don't think rubella. But they've had a couple outbreaks because stupid parents, and I literally mean stupid parents, and if you're a parent and you don't get your kid vaccinated and you're listening to this, I got news for you. You're dumb. You're stupid. You're taking a huge risk of your child getting really sick for no good reason. And, of course, there is no good reason to get sick, but I think you understand what I'm saying. But if you do travel to France, just be very much aware that just because it's not on one of those watch list things or whatever, hey, don't travel here or travel ban, there are still some problems within that country because you have a socialist government that doesn't like to call people out on things. They would rather be seen as popular as opposed to doing the right thing. So that's why they've got problems with supercells. That's why they have a problem with Muslim, I don't even want to call it communities because it's not a community when they're violent to other people, but you have a large population of Muslims that have taken over certain parts of different cities, different villages, and no one wants to call them out on it, and then the French government won't deport them. They need to deport them, especially if they are getting involved in violence like that and being really cruel to the French people. Because it's the French people that are suffering the worst. Big time. But see, here's the thing. The French people, they're not being very smart. They keep voting in the same person who is not addressing the same problem that keeps happening. So I think they need to vote in somebody else kind of thing. But that's a tangent, side note, just letting you know about that. I don't know, I just felt like I need to tell you guys about that. Because knowledge is power. But anyway, let's go ahead and start on this union. We're going a little long in this one, but I look at it this way. Let's have some fun. So this is the Airline Pilots Association International. It was founded July 27th, 1931. Excuse me. They are headquartered in McLean, Virginia. They have locations in the United States and Canada, and that would explain their symbol. I was like, okay, this tells me they probably have something to do with Canada. If you look at their logo, I was like, I bet they're having to do something with Canada here. Because I've noticed that whenever we see these labor unions or these associations that have locations in other countries like Canada, they always try and make their label or their icon or their logo look very much international. I'm like, okay, basically that means the United States is yet again going to be used as their personal piggy bank is what that means. And so I was like, I'm not falling for that. I can spot this a mile away, just like that shady guy in the Air Force Academy that should have never been allowed in. So over time, you learn how to spot stuff from a distance. And if anything, that's learned to bring me comfort. At first, it creeped me out that I could spot stuff, but it's just how do I word this? You are learning as you go, if that makes sense, because your brain memorizes things. Thank goodness, right? That's always a positive. So it says here, they have 59,000 plus members. Their key people, their president is Captain Joe DePete. They have affiliations with the AFL-CIO, the IFALPA, and the CLC. It says here, the Airline Pilots Association International, ALPA, is the largest pilot union in the world. Well, probably because we include Canada, representing more than 59,000 pilots from 35 U.S. and Canadian airlines. That's why right there, because when you combine them, that's why there's so many. ALPA was founded on July 27, 1931, and is a member of the AFL-CIO and the Canadian Labour Congress. That's what that CLC means. I forgot what that meant. But just, be aware that a labor congress is really not a good thing. I think we talked about this in a previous podcast where I was talking about how you have the Labour Party over in the UK. They're really not for people. They act more like communists. I bet the Labour Congress is very similar in terms of the Canadian one. It says, let's see, go on here to the history. It says ALPA was founded by Captain David L. I think it's Benke and 23 other key figures in Chicago, Illinois. That is suspicious because Chicago is very corrupt. It still is. And that was founded in 1931. In the 1930s, flying was a perilous occupation. I believe that. It wasn't super safe. Thus, from the time of its formation, one of ALPA's main goals was to improve air safety. Now, that I very much agree with. And if you want to know why, there's this really good TV series called Mayday, and then I think it got changed to Why Planes Crash, and then there was a third series. But it's really neat, because what they do is they start basically from the crash site, and sometimes they work backwards, which is really kind of cool, because you're basically going to the scene of a crash, and they work backwards. And then other times, the episodes are more focused on the individuals on the plane, which is kind of cool. It's not like a melodrama, because I don't like that stuff, but sometimes it will show where the pilots are checking in, at the airport, and they're showing their process. Of course, this is a reenactment. And then they show what happens on the plane. They reenact it, and they show it crashing, things like that. And then they call in what's the name of that? There's an organization that comes in. I used to know it like crazy. I used to know it off the top of my head really quick because I used to watch all those shows. I'm pretty sure I've watched every episode because they're just so fascinating. But there's this specific organization that whenever a plane goes down, especially an airliner, they are immediately called in to determine what happened and to figure out why something happened and is it something that can be prevented going forward. And almost always it can be prevented, which is awesome because we can always learn from our mistakes, which is good. And sometimes the mistake is pilot error. Other times it's airline error. Other times it's extreme weather. Other times it's a fluke and they're trying to figure out what possibly happened. I mean, sometimes they can't pinpoint it, which is rare. But it's kind of like one of those things, if they can find the black box, which is that box, in case you don't know, it's that box that is on every airline that records every conversation that the pilot, everything that goes on the cockpit is recorded, whether it's conversations, the measurements of the instruments. It memorizes everything and it records everything. So whenever a plane crashes, they desperately try and find that black box because that will tell them, okay, did they lose a wing? Were they flying on no fuel? Because a lot of times when these planes are going down and having problems, they're not always in communication with the tower because number one, they may not be within range of an air tower or a traffic tower, air traffic tower, my apologies. They may not be within range or also their equipment may not be working correctly so that it's blocking them from being able to talk to somebody. But everything is still being recorded on that black box so they can still kind of figure out what's going on. But back in the day in the 30s, flying was considered a luxury, yes, but it was still a dangerous thing. It was not safe like it is today. And that's not to scare anybody. It's just, sometimes you learn as you go, if that makes sense. So it says here in 1933, the decision by the National Labor Board to limit the flight time for pilots and co-pilots to 85 hours a month was the result of the union's first major lobbying campaign to make the sky safer. By the end of the 30s, the association had persuaded numerous airlines to form air traffic control centers. Amen! So just think about those weren't around yet. Think about that. If they're creating them, that means they weren't there yet. How scary would that be? They're just flying around having to try and talk to somebody, and it's not an air traffic center. And had started the Airworthiness and Performance Committee. Oh, okay. The first ALPA technical committee dedicated to improving flight safety. In the 1940s, numerous ALPA pilots enlisted in the military to help the United States battle the Axis powers during World War II. In this decade, ALPA created additional air safety committees, and the newly established International Federation of Airline Pilots Association worked to improve flight safety around the world. Now, I will say this. When it said around the world, that reminded me of Africa. Okay, so whatever airplane crashes we have here in the United States, it is nothing compared to the catastrophes and the high rate of planes that crash in Africa. Because African airlines are very unsafe. They do not have the same safety standards and measures as we do in the United States and in Europe. So we don't hear about their flights that go down because it is so common and it is so scary over there. Like, it is just so dangerous. Like, their pilots, there was one crash I read about. I'll have to look it up, and we can have that be a part of housekeeping on one of the next episodes. But there was one airline. It was it was an airline that was specific to Africa, meaning it wasn't like Delta or American Airlines. It was an African airline, a company from Africa. They were notorious for crashing and killing people. But yet their flights were so cheap, the seats were so cheap, and people that were boarding the planes, they knew that there was almost a 50-50 chance they could die. But because they were so desperate to travel somewhere or to vacation somewhere or to go see someone, they knew it wasn't safe. That's what's sad and sick. A lot of the people that are from Africa and that are flying on these African airlines, they know they have some of the worst airlines on the entire planet, and yet they still fly on them. And this one particular airline, I cannot think of the airline or the incident, but these two pilots basically had no training, if you think about it. Like, it was very limited hours, and what they do, they rely way too much on the Airbus. I have always disagreed with having an airplane completely run by a computer, because then guess what? If something happens, the pilots don't know what to do with the plane because they're not trained. That's why I prefer a Boeing as opposed to an Airbus, because with a Boeing, you can put on autopilot, but if something happens, you can take it off autopilot immediately, and the pilot can fly that plane the way he or she is professionally trained to do so. Well, unfortunately, over in Africa, they have a ton of planes that are flying around. They're being flown by pilots that don't have a clue how to fly a plane unless the computer is always working and there's never a problem. Like, they're not trained. So they have crashes all the time that we don't hear about. So just FYI, next time you get on a plane, be so grateful that you are boarding an American or European airline, or you're boarding in one of those countries and not in Africa. Because that is just scary. But, just really think about that. Like, because this is going on right now. These airlines that are not very safe over in Africa. It is really bad. So it says, in 1951, ALPA created an internal air safety system which developed into the world's biggest independent, non-governmental safety structure. During the 1950s, jet travel was introduced, marking a new period for the air industry. In this era, crew fatigue became a greater concern for pilots, with the union successfully persuading the Civil Aeronautics Board to stop airlines from scheduling impractical flights. I agree with that, because if you want someone to be really good at their job, don't burden them. And especially when you're dealing with something like airplanes, like if a pilot or a co-pilot makes a mistake, it could easily kill all the people on that flight. So I would think that what they do is super importante. Like it's nothing against receptionists or people like that, but flying an airplane is not the same as working in an office and answering a phone. Like if a receptionist doesn't answer the phone for 5 minutes, no one's going to die. But if a pilot doesn't do the right thing in a very serious situation, everybody on that plane could die. Like that's how serious it is. Like if a pilot doesn't pay attention to the fact that he's got a fire out on a wing, if he ignores that for 5 minutes, guess what? There's a big chance that that plane could completely burst into flames and kill everybody. So there's a seriousness to the job, is what I'm trying to say. It says, during the 1960s, jet transport of people and goods became commonplace. The ALPA addressing the new safety issues that came with this type of travel. In 1961, ALPA's second president, Clarence N. Sayin, directly asked new U.S. President John F. Kennedy to make hijacking a federal crime. That's sad that it wasn't a federal crime by this time. Think about that. So that means it was a problem, but it wasn't a federal crime. And it goes on to say, which subsequently became the law of the land in September of that year. I never knew that. That is creepy. The Southern Airways strike of 1960 to 1962, a conflict that ALPA winningly took on in a dispute over pilot wages, is the longest walkout in the union's history. For years, ALPA had lobbied hard for the creation of an independent government agency that would investigate accidents. This might be what I was talking about. And in 1967, the National Transportation Safety Board, that's it, that's what I'm thinking of, was established to conduct such investigations. They are good. They literally take all the bits and pieces of the plane and they put it in a hangar or wherever they can find a place to put it. And they find every little piece. It doesn't matter how many bits and pieces are blown apart. They gather them all up and they put the plane back together as much as they can to try and figure out what happened, regardless of whether or not they can find that black box. Now, if that's not dedication to the job, I don't know what is, because those people, they are smart and they take it seriously. Goes on to say, in 1972, ALPA began an anti-skyjacking lobby offensive, among other efforts to fight air terrorism. Skyjacking? That's so weird. Which was all too common in the early 1970s. Now I know what they're talking about. Okay, so I remember my parents talking about this. They said in the 1970s, it was common for hijackings to happen on airlines all the time back then. And these people, they just wanted money. They would hijack a plane to get money. And so that's one of the reasons why when 9/11 happened, no one thought that the 9/11 terrorists, that they never thought that they would or that they wanted to fly those planes into buildings and kill people. Because up until that point, all a terrorist had ever wanted or a hijacker had ever wanted was just money. So that's why when 911 professionals and people's families were receiving these calls from people on these airlines on 9/11 saying, hey, this is not a normal hijacking. They literally plan on killing us. Like, you need to do something about this. So it's one of those things like 9/11 changed, how we travel forever. Because nothing like that had ever been done before. Because previously, all they ever wanted was money. It was never about killing. Never, never, never. Not like that. It says also in 1972, after decades of campaigning by ALPA, the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, established an airport certification program, which required airport operators to prove they are following safety standards. Well, that's good. Because otherwise, how can they prove that they know their job? That's kind of creepy. That'd be like having a doctor say he's an MD, but he hasn't completed medical school. That's really creepy. In 1976, the union's dedicated work resulted in NASA creating the Aviation Safety Reporting System. Oh, that's cool. The ASRS. Okay, so this is ringing a bell. A database of confidential incident reports. Okay? During the 1980s, ALPA accomplished much in the way of safety. In 1981, among other achievements, the association convinced the FAA that fasten seatbelt signs were needed. So that means they weren't there before. Think about that. And in 1987, the FAA again heeded calls from the union requiring the installation of a traffic collision avoidance system. Wow, in every airplane. So that means it wasn't in there yet. It wasn't required. Wow, that is sad. Okay. So on March 4th, 1989, ALPA pilots at Eastern Airlines went on strike in support of the International Association of Machinists. Oh, give me a break. Really? Like, stay in your own union. My goodness, don't be used by somebody else. It says the pilots stood their ground for 285 days. Oh, really? Following the 1994 crash of U.S. Air Flight 427, in which all 132 people on board were killed, the NTSB ruled that pilot error was the cause. But ALPA fought that decision. They fought it. And in the end, it was found that a malfunction in the rudder control system of the B-737 plane was likely the cause. Subsequently, a redesign of all B-737s, the most commonly flown commercial airplane, was ordered by the FAA. Good for them. See, that's the thing. It's not always pilot error. Sometimes these systems are not correct. Because here's what I know about this. I don't know if you've ever met an engineer, but engineers are stupid. That's my personal opinion, and here's why. I don't know why companies do this, but what they do when they're trying to invent something or they want to create something, they have engineers go in and create it. But the engineer is not looking at it from the point of view of the person that's actually going to be using the equipment. That's what happened here, and that's what happens all the time with these airplanes, these jets, especially these fancier ones. You have engineers that are like, oh, we should do it this way, we should do it this way, but guess what? These engineers are not pilots. So you've got people that are super smart in terms of engineering, but they're total morons when it comes to thinking as a pilot. And where should stuff be located for the pilot, the person that is actually flying the plane? See, that's why I can't stand engineers. Like, I can't even date them. They irritate me. Because they just like to take stuff apart and put it back together, but then they don't really make it better. And then when you say, hey, that doesn't work for me, they get mad about it. It's like, okay, when you are creating a product, you need to be thinking about the person that is actually going to use it. Well, unfortunately, engineers, they really don't have a lot of empathy for human life. That's been my experience. That's just been from the engineers that I've met. I have yet to meet an engineer that has empathy or sympathy or that takes it seriously when someone dies. I don't know how else to describe it, but they just lack that lovingness, that value of human life. They're so mechanical in their brain, like they're so kind of anti-human in how they view stuff, that's why they're so technically good at engineering, but they suck at other things, is what I'm trying to say. So if you're an engineer, you need to go to charm school, and also you need to learn about how to value human life. Because I guarantee you, if you were on that flight that crashed and died, and your last moments on this earth was hearing yourself scream, and then you get blown to bits when you hit the ground, I guarantee you would think twice about when you create something and when you don't care what the consumer or what the pilot has to deal with when you create something that sucks. And I know I'm speaking firmly about that, but literally, there are some engineers out there that they really don't care or value human life. And I've met some of them, and I was shocked because I was like, these are the people that are getting paid a lot of money to do so-called great things, but they don't have empathy, they don't have sympathy, they're just weird. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's just like, it gives me the creeps. Because some of the things that come out of their mouth is so inhuman and inhumane. I'm like, why are we employing these people? It's really weird. I think we could totally find better people to create and invent things. But anyway, it says, after another tragic 1994 crash of American Eagle Flight 4184, a study of icing issues with the ATR 72 commenced, an inquiry ALPA was closely involved with. The outcomes were, this is interesting, the outcomes were alterations in the design of the ATR 72 and improved pilot training. ALP's chief accomplishment of the 1990s was the 1995 enactment of the One Level of Safety program by the FAA, resulting in stricter safety rules for smaller airplanes. ALPA came up with the name for the program and lobbied hard for the measure. In 1997, the Canadian Airline Pilots Association merged with ALPA, forming what would become known as ALPA Canada. As of 2020, ALPA Canada represents more than 5,000 pilots. I didn't know it was that many. That's very interesting. In 2000, after years of advocacy by the association, the FAA approved ALPA's recommendations for land and hold short operations. In the wake of the catastrophic September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks, improving airline security would be ALPA's main priority for the next several years. This concentrated effort by the union included the formation of their security task force. Okay, that's interesting. Instrumental in the creation of numerous new security rules. Okay. I have a story about that in just a second. During the 2010s, ALPA continued to campaign for improvements in airline security and safety. One such issue was the deliberate and dangerous act of pointing lasers at pilots in the air. Thanks to ALPA's efforts, a new law was enacted making this undertaking a federal crime. Good. Good. I also think that drones should not be easily available for people to purchase. That has greatly affected airplane traffic. It has made the skies not as safe because you've got stupid people that don't need drones to fly around and look at stuff. It's just causing a problem. So I think that buying a drone should be rare and it should be limited because it has caused a problem, at least here in Oklahoma City, with these stupid kids. It's mostly parents, stupid parents against stupid parents strike again. These stupid parents buy their stupid kids. It's genetic, unfortunately. They buy their stupid kids these drones and they let them play with it as a toy. And they don't realize they could harm somebody. They could accidentally kill somebody. And guess what? You kill somebody like that, more likely you're going to go to jail even as a minor. Either that, let me put it this way, if your kid kills somebody and you're the parent, you might be going to jail instead of your kid. So do you really think you're going to love your kid as much? I mean, are you willing to serve in jail because of your stupidity and you letting your kid do something? Like, think about that. Like, we've had some problems with that here in Oklahoma, so I kind of have a firm opinion about it. So it says here, in 2020, amidst the COVID-19 outbreak, ALPA pressed governments in the United States and Canada to pass legislation that would protect airline employees. The association was actively involved in the talks that resulted in the CARES Act, which stabilized the aviation industry and provide economic relief for pilots. My guessing is tax dollars went to them. So, what I have to say about the security task force and I think it's TSA agents or something, like the people that work in the airports, what an attitude problem, most of them. I had to fly somewhere last year, and I think it was in Oklahoma, or was it, I'm trying to think, I had to fly to Florida for a meeting, and I think it was in Florida, pretty sure it was in Florida, because I don't think an Oklahoman would act like this, because we're nice compared to a lot of people. Even though Puerto Rico may call us Yankees, we do have that southern charm. So, thank you, Puerto Rico, you're wrong again. But anyway, so I was in Florida, I was checking in, and this security guard agent person, TSA agent, whatever, he was such a jerk to me and tried to yell at me about something. I can't remember what it was about. But he yelled at me. It was so hateful. And it's just like, dude, give people the benefit of the doubt. It's like, sir, I didn't know. I apologize. And, I just did whatever he said. You know what he acted like? He acted worse than a dirty cop. A mean, dirty cop. You know what I don't understand is how, people shame and blame the police force, but yet they don't shame and blame TSA agents. I find that very interesting, and I don't believe in shaming and blaming, but I think if you're going to call a spade, you need to do it across the board. If you're going to call someone out in one field, you need to call them out in another field, because I think these security agents, or whatever they're called at airports now, they're on a power trip every single time. Every single time. And it's just like, I know they're probably under a lot of pressure, but, it doesn't hurt to be kind. Like, you can still do your job and do it well, but just not be a hateful jerk. And it's just like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, this guy was so horrible to me, folks. It made my mouth drop. Like, it just made me freeze. Like, I just froze. Like, I was like, did he really just talk to me like that? It was just like pure hate was coming out of his mouth, and he just glared at me. I mean, he acted like I committed a crime, and I didn't. I don't even remember what it was about. It was something simple, like something to do with my shoes or my backpack or my purse or something. I can't remember what, but it's like, just be kind to people. Like, I would say people are already a little tense flying these days, especially with COVID and things like that. And I would think that it would be better to help put passengers at ease as opposed to make their trip so intense that it's like they never want to come back to your airport again. Because, I mean, let me say this to TSA agents. You're not paid to be mean. You're not paid to be a jerk. We don't work for you. You work for us. Because we're technically paying your wages. So you could at least be respectful to the people that are paying your wages. Still do your job. Still do all the safety stuff. But there's a way to be kind. See, because here's the thing. If we were to be disrespectful to you like you are to us, we would be taken to the ground and probably tased, if not arrested, and probably be imprisoned for a federal crime. But you get away with being mean and hateful all the time, and we can't say or do anything because it would be considered a federal offense. And I think you lovely TSA agents, I'm not even going to say lovely because it's not lovely. You unprofessional, there we go, that's better. You unprofessional TSA agents, you know who you are. I just want you to know I'm very disappointed in you and your profession. Because time and time again, I have heard and seen just horrible behavior from you guys and gals. Sometimes I can't tell if a woman's a man or not. It was so creepy. But, you know, just, it never hurts to be kind to people. I would think that would be basic respect. It's like you expect us to respect you, but you don't respect us. And you wonder why people don't like you, and maybe they hate you. I don't hate you. I don't even really dislike you per se. I'm just disappointed. I'm disappointed that people that live and work in the United States and have a very important role in our society would misbehave like that, because that's what you're doing. You're technically misbehaving. And you're giving yourself permission to act however you want, whenever you want, when that is using and abusing your authority. And what I want to call you out on is that, you know, when a cop misbehaves and basically tries to do, or he or she does whatever he or she wants, but they use the badge as a form of protection. If it's wrong for a cop to do that, then what makes you think it's okay what you're doing? It's not okay. You get away with it, unfortunately, and you shouldn't. Because, see, I look at it this way. When someone is purposely mean, you know, over time, that changes your personality. I don't know if you're aware of that, TSA agents, but the meaner you are to people, the more you become what you hate. Does that make sense? I hope so, because I haven't met a nice TSA agent. I can't even think of one. Like, flying used to be fun. It's not fun anymore. Like, I would rather drive. I would almost rather drive long periods of time sometimes as opposed to flying. That's the number one reason why I drive as opposed to fly, because I'm like, I don't have to deal with the stress of an airport and the stress of a TSA agent. I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to deal with your attitude. Because it's like I'm already paying hundreds of dollars for an airplane ticket. I'm already having to do all this pre-check-in and stuff, and then I get lip from you. Like, I don't pay for that lip service, so why don't you keep your lip service to yourself and just be kind and respectful? Like, treat others how you want to be treated. You know the golden rule that applies to everybody on the face of the earth? Maybe you could try using that. But anyway, it says here, talks about their current leadership, and it talks about their member pilot groups. This is interesting. It says here, ALPA represents the following bargaining units. I never knew this. So there's Air Transit, Air Transport International, Air Wisconsin Airlines. I didn't know Wisconsin had an airlines. That's interesting. Alaska Airlines, Bearskin Airlines, Calm Air. I didn't know there was such a thing as Calm Air. I would want to know if it's actually calm, considering the TSA agents we have to deal with these days. You have Canadian North, Cumitair, looks like Commute Air, Delta Airlines, Endeavor Air, that's kind of cute, Envoy Air, FedEx Express, First Air, Frontier Airlines, Hawaiian Airlines, Jazz, I've never heard of that. JetBlue Airways, oh, I saw a hilarious Saturday Night Live skit that was making fun of JetBlue. This was several years ago. It's the blonde chick that married that really tall guy, and they're now divorced. I can't remember her name, but she's the one that played Hillary Clinton. Not the current girl, but the previous Hillary that was blonde and was married to this really tall guy who's funny. She was in a hilarious skit on Saturday Night Live about JetBlue, and I think Steve Carell was in the skit with her, the guy from that show called Office, I think is what it's called. And she's eating these blue chips knowing that their plane's going to crash and that it's got problems. And that JetBlue just keeps denying the fact they've got problems, and yet she can watch CNN News on one of the stations on her TV in front of her on the airline, and it's telling her that the airplane number basically that she's on is having problems, but yet the airline won't admit it. I just thought it was so funny. And then the next airline, I'll continue on this list here. The next airline is Kalita Air. I've never heard of that one. The next one is Kelowna Flightcraft Limited. Haven't heard of that one. Mesa Air Group. I've heard of that one. Morningstar Air Express Inc. I haven't heard of that. Parameter Aviation. That's new one to me. Piedmont Airlines. Haven't heard of that. You know, we have a Piedmont here in Oklahoma. And for the longest time, I didn't know where the name Piedmont came from. It's actually a town or a village or something over in England. And I'm like, really? Of all things to name a town in Oklahoma, I'm like, considering how some people don't like the British, I just thought it was funny. I'm just like, what are the odds? The next airline is PAL Airlines, then PSA Airlines. I have not heard of either of those. Spirit Airlines, I've heard of them. Then there's Sun Country Airlines, that's new to me. United Airlines. Oh, this is funny. Wasaya, I think that's how you say it. Or Wasaya. That is funny. I haven't heard of that airline, but that is funny. Then we have WestJet, haven't heard of that. And then WestJet Encore, I haven't heard of that either. But some really interesting airlines here. Definitely some really neat names. That cracks me up. Okay. But anyway, wow, we're at an hour and a half. Wow, this is a good podcast. So let's take a look real quick and see what the next one's going to be. So that was the Airline Pilots Association. The next one's going to be the American Federation of Government Employees, the AFGE, and I'll double check and make sure we haven't done that one because it sounds familiar. It doesn't look like I've ever clicked on it. And I don't recognize their slogan or their image or their icon, but that name sounds a little familiar. But then again, we have a lot of different associations and labor unions that may be for government employees. We saw some of this when it comes to USPS and how they have other labor unions and associations that they're not necessarily directly within USPS, but they contract with them, if that makes sense. So we will take a look at that at our next podcast. So I hope that you enjoyed this one. And until next time, I pray that you're happy, healthy, and whole, and that you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.